Hey everyone, Tim from Workshop 12 here. Today we're up at 4 Star Motorsports, guys that I always go to for fabrication and making sure everything's set up with my cars. Great race shop up here, long history and pedigree in racing. Today we're going to be working on a few things on the Nemesis build. First thing that we're doing is we're going to be swapping in this transmission that is supposed to be in the Nemesis. It's going to actually get swapped into my green machine out here. So we're going to switch up the different transmissions in those two cars. Now, the reason why we're doing this is that the transmission that's in my green car has a racing front differential in it. And so it was put in there for a drag racing setup, meaning that the two front wheels are going to always run in lockstep. One's not going to run in a different speed than the other, which is great from a race application, but when you're driving around inside of a parking lot or anything on concrete or pavement, it's basically like driving a 4x4 with your wheels locked on. So it's a herky-jerky kind of as the wheels are trying to catch up as you're turning around. So it's not a great driving experience, but when it's swapped into the Nemesis, that front wheel is going to actually become the rear wheel drive on the Nemesis. So it's actually great because now we've got the two rear wheels locked in. We're not going to get any kind of peg-legged burnouts or anything like that with the transmission. So it's going to be a great swap for both cars. So I get a standard transmission, a 6-speed STI transmission in my green car, and then we get the performance differential in the Nemesis. So that's going to be pretty cool. The other things that we're going to be doing while we've got the green car here is the clutch in my my Subaru just will not hold the power that we're putting down there. So we're going to be putting in a new clutch flywheel, also putting in a new starter because when it's hot, that starter doesn't seem to want to crank that built engine, and it's got to cool down for about 20 minutes before I can start it up again. So the transmission is going to be going in. One of the things that's interesting with the transmission and the swap that we'll be doing is when we get it going on the Nemesis, essentially it's going to get cut right about here. So all of this stuff is going to be removed off of the back of the transmission because we no longer need the drive shaft going to the rear wheels because the actual front wheel prop shafts are what's going to be our rear wheel. So we're actually using a kit from Factory 5 to be able to make that conversion on the back. So it's one that they use in their 818 kit. So it allows us to pop this back, switch out everything that's in there, seal it all back up again, and then essentially put a bracket on top of it to be able to have that drive shaft driven, or the drive shaft, the shifter driven by cables. So then we'll be hooking those cable shifters up into an automatic shift box that I have that I can use paddles for shifting my gears, even though I'll still be using the clutch. So those are some of the things that we're doing today. The main thing is getting that transmission swap back and forth, but then I'll also be working on some of the different Nemesis wiring and being able to give you kind of a walk around of the chassis, show you what's all been done and why we've done it to the car. All right, today's job is really going to be working through this engine harness here, or wiring harness. So this is out of the WRX-STI, the 03, that matches up the engine that I have, the EJ207. So I've already taken all of the different sheathing off of the wires here. Here we got our main connections that's going to go in and connect to the actual engine harness itself, and then we see it comes back across all the way back over here to the ECU plugs. So I need to trace all this stuff through, rip out all the wiring for all the systems that I don't need, which will be a lot, and get them out of the harness, and then start looking about how I'm going to lay it out on the chassis, which is over here, which we'll take a little bit of a look at later as well. So good times, here we go. Alright, after many hours later, we've got some progress done on the wiring harness here. You can see in the background, also have the other harness that's being used for a donor if needed. But if we take a look here, we can see that we've got the harness really thinned out quite a bit. So there's lots of stuff that we pulled out of here, things for heater controls, seats, all that kind of stuff. So just been pulling away, you know, ending up with a garbage pail full of wire. And that will end up, you know, going over into the Nemesis. So if we take a look here, we can take a better look at the car itself. Everything's all a Dom tube chassis that we have all configured here. Front suspension is all push rod suspension. So we've got a manual steering rack in the front, and then we have a tilt and pedal box that's not in there right now, but that's what is going in there. So we have our front set up. Then as we roll along, we've got the cage going across the side here for side impact and for security. Still need to put in floorboards and floor in it. We'll likely use some thick aluminum. Then we've got the actual roll hoop here. So we've got to make sure that it's braced for any kind of forward movement here as well. And then we've got the actual stays down the back to be able to hold it from going back. So you'll notice that a lot of this stuff is connected here with removable connectors. So this allows us to be able to remove these different bars to get the engine out and do any kind of service that we need on it. And then we also widened out the chassis here as well to be able to fit the EJ207 in the back. At the back, we also made some different changes here, where we, instead of a push rod suspension going across the back, because we needed a larger width on the back to hold the Subaru transmission and engine, put in some new, basically strut mounts on the back here for our coilovers. What we'll end up doing is actually running a strut bar essentially from those strut mounts back to the center middle bar and then back up to that other strut as well, just to get any kind of flex out of there. But as you'll see, all of these connections on the back here are also removable, so those allow us to be able to pull out the engine and transmission at any time that we need to service anything. At the back, we've got our transmission mount here, and then we can see the engine mounts in the side there as well. So everything kind of comes back to the back. We just have a boxed in section back of the back here, braced. Might need to use that for holding on the diffuser. We're not quite sure yet, but it can be changed if we need to make any adjustments for it. But that's essentially the chassis for the Nemesis. And then we'll be throwing in the new engine and transmission. The engine itself is sitting over here on the engine stand. We're going to have to do some different configuration. We're not going to be able to fit the top mount the way that it typically fits. Might have to swap around the intake manifold. We're going to have to do a few different things to get the tight fit that we need on the angle that's coming back on the chassis. So one of the things that I'll be doing now is just taking some of the wiring harness that I've been thinning out and seeing if just the general lengths and stuff are going to work with what we need on the chassis. Can I put it to where the ECU is going to be held? Is the fuse box going to work? You know, do I have the right length of wires to be able to get out to the engine harness? Just doing some quick layup to be able to see how everything's all going to fit together. So generally speaking, the wiring looks not too bad. So we've got essentially our engine harness that's going to be coming back here, dropping down into this little pocket. So right in this pocket area here, from here going on back, there's going to be a little compartment on the side where I can tuck my shifter box, actually, for my master shift box that's going to do the cable driven shifting, will sit in a little box on the side here. Then we've got a run of the electrical across over to the other side, where we'll be creating another box, and that's where my ECU for the engine will be going, both watertight and sealed so that nothing gets in. And then we've got the main harness line going all the way up to the front, up to another little fuse box, which I will eventually get mounted up in here in this little space where the steering column goes through. So we're going to tuck some different things up into that little space there that won't be used, so it'll be used for any kind of things that I need for fuse boxes, fuse panels, and run everything up into that area. So overall, wiring harness not too bad. I think there's still some more that I need to thin out a bit, and I'm sure I probably thinned out stuff that I shouldn't have, but we'll find that out a little bit later. But in general, not too bad for what we're looking for wiring. It's actually fitting a lot better than I hoped, so that's a good thing. Well, that's all we've got for today's day of work. Managed to get a little bit done, and next time hopefully we'll be seeing the car coming back into my new workshop that I'm going to get set up, hopefully this weekend. Then we'll be able to start working on the car anytime that I want to, which will be great. So stay tuned for some more videos, and we'll see how progress on this build goes.